the News. A daily opportunity to go beyond the headlines and explore the news in depth. Revisited, a return to places which were in the news a long time ago. Reporters, our in-depth reports on international news. The 51%, a program about women reshaping our world. The Observers, meet our observers who alert us to hidden realities. Focus, exclusive reports by our correspondents and journalists. And Down to Earth, on the vast potential of our planet. Every day, watch Beyond the News on France 24 and France24.com.
Western allies are scrambling to get more weapons to Ukraine as Russia steps up attacks in the Donbas region. Meanwhile, time is running out for thousands of people in the besieged city of Mariupol to evacuate. And on the diplomatic front, the head of the European Council, Charles Michel, is the latest EU official to visit Kyiv. It's a huge night for French politics. The two presidential candidates are facing off in a live televised debate. Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen will make their cases to undecided voters ahead of Sunday's vote. And a court in the UK has issued an order to extradite Julian Assange to the United States to face charges of spying. The order still needs to be signed by Britain's Interior Minister, and the WikiLeaks founder can still appeal the decision. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As the Russian invasion of Ukraine enters a new phase, tens of thousands of people in the besieged city of Mariupol are heeding a last call to evacuate. The southern port city has been on the brink of a Russian occupation for days, with the Ukrainian soldiers who remain holed up inside of a steel factory. Meanwhile, Russia has stepped up attacks in the east. Leo McGuinn has the latest.
The Azovstal steel plant in the port city of Mariupol, under constant assault from Russian forces. It is the last pocket of Ukrainian resistance in the city. For days, Ukrainian fighters have been holed up here, and according to authorities, so have 1,000 civilians sheltering underneath the factory. Short on food, the soldiers took to social media to launch a plea for help.
We are probably facing our last days, if not ours. The enemy outnumbers us 10 to 1. We appeal and plead to all world leaders to help us. We ask them to use the procedure of extraction and take us to the territory of a third-party state.
The Ukrainian president says his request to Russia for an evacuation has so far been ignored.
Unfortunately, we've had no response from Russia to our exchange offer, which could save the civilians and defenders of Mariupol.
Russia has stepped up its attacks across the eastern front in its sights, cities like Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. With this offensive, Russia claims to have entered a new phase of the war.
The Russian army is carrying out the task set by the head of the army for the special military operation. As a result, the plan to liberate the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics is being implemented, as well as measures to restore peace.
Russia continued to launch assaults on the other besieged cities. In Kharkiv, at least 4 people were killed on Tuesday in shelling of residential areas.
Charles Michel is the latest EU official to visit Kyiv. The head of the European Council described Ukraine as the heart of a free and democratic Europe. Our correspondent in Brussels, Dave Keating, has more on Michel's visit.
Well, certainly President Zelensky will be talking about the two main things he needs from the EU right now, which are weapons and sanctions. So there was a call between Western leaders and Zelensky yesterday that included President Michel. It also included French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, U.S. President Joe Biden, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the German Chancellor, on and on. It was a very big call, and Zelensky was pleading for more weapons to fight fight this attack in eastern Ukraine, because at this point, it's getting quite down to the wire. They don't have the weapons they need, and it's really uncertain whether, even if new weapons announcements were made right now, whether they can get to eastern Ukraine in time. Now, he will also be pushing the EU to take action on the oil embargo that's currently under discussion. Last week, a fifth round of sanctions was agreed by the European Union, which included a complete ban on imports of Russian coal. But that's not a huge amount. The real hit would be with oil or gas. Gas for the moment is off the table, but they are discussing an embargo of Russian oil that would be phased in, that would come with a lot of caveats. But those discussions I've been hearing here in Brussels are kind of on wraps until next week. They don't want to interfere with the French election. You never know how these things are going to land in an election, and generally the Council doesn't like to take big decisions around any kind of big election. So next week we're probably, I'm hearing, going to have an oil embargo on the table for discussion. Germany and Austria have really made moves to talk about what they could accept with that. So I think that President Michel will convey that to President Zelensky. It's coming, just wait. But of course, we'll see what they say in this press conference that they're going to give later today. If we have any indication from President Michel about the imminency of such an oil embargo, I don't think he will be able to say anything about that at this point. And of course, whether the EU can talk about increasing its military aid to Ukraine in the coming days.
That's our correspondent in Brussels, Dave Keating, reporting. Lawmakers in Finland are debating whether to seek NATO membership. Both Finland and Sweden have said they are considering joining the alliance in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, if they do, the Kremlin has warned of a nuclear buildup in the Baltics. Finland's prime minister said a decision could come within weeks. Well, here in France, it's a pivotal moment in the presidential campaign. President Emmanuel Macron and far-right candidate Marine Le Pen are set to face off in a live televised debate. It's a high-stakes challenge for both candidates, especially for Le Pen, who admitted to a poor performance in the 2017 debate. Our colleagues at France 2 and Nick Rushworth report.
Both candidates will want to appear calm and collected for the 2022 TV debate, the opposite of the confusion and tension of 5 years ago.
Vous êtes à plat ventre en permanence devant l'Allemagne, devant les puissances d'argent, devant les banques.
Marine Le Pen's team acknowledges she was too aggressive. One of the mistakes to avoid.
There's no point getting angry. You have to give a measured response, defend policies and ideas, and show you can be president.
One pitfall they will want to avoid is mutual condescension, as in 2017 when they went head-to-head over details concerning two French companies.
Vous êtes en train de lire une fiche qui ne correspond pas au dossier que vous avez cité. Il y en a un qui fait des téléphones, et l'autre, ça n'a rien à voir. Il fait à la fois des turbines et du matériel industriel.
Emmanuel Macron's team realizes he must not come across as superior.
It's not arrogant to ask questions at a time as crucial as the presidential debate, to show what's behind the cloak of banalities Marine Le Pen has been hiding behind for weeks.
Marine Le Pen, by her own admission, arrived at the 2017 debate feeling tired and poorly prepared.
This time, I think they've decided to calm down. She'll want to look competent, credible, not lost in her notes, and presidential. And he'll want to avoid being seen as arrogant or like he's teaching someone a lesson.
Madame Le Pen.
The duel was electric right up to the last second 5 years ago. One key difference this time is that Emmanuel Macron will have 5 years of policy decisions to defend.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson faced an angry House of Commons this afternoon. His appearance came one day after he apologized for attending his own birthday party in June 2020 when the country was on lockdown. Lawmakers are set to vote on whether Johnson should be investigated for allegedly lying about the scandal.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I've been absolutely clear that I humbly accept what the police have said. I've paid the fixed penalty notice. And, Mr. Speaker, what I think the country and what I think the whole House would really rather do is get on with the things for which we were elected, deliver on our promises to the British people. And you could not have clearer evidence of the intellectual bankruptcy of Labour. They have no plans. They have no plans for energy. They have no plans for social care.
A court in the UK has issued an order to extradite Julian Assange to the United States. The order still needs to be signed by Britain's Interior Minister, and the WikiLeaks founder can still appeal the decision. Assange faces charges of spying, including 18 criminal counts. He has sought to avoid a trial in the U.S. for more than a decade after publishing a huge trove of classified documents. Our London correspondent Benedict Pavio has the latest.
Julian Assange's extradition to the United States has moved one step closer this morning after a court order was issued. It was during a procedural administrative hearing that lasted just 7 minutes. Westminster Magistrates Court formally issued that order to extradite the co-founder of WikiLeaks after, as you mentioned, over 10 years, I think I've been reporting, since his very first arrest and all the legal wrangling that's been going on. So now Home Secretary Priti Patel, as a result of this order, would need to approve the order. But I think it is highly likely that the defense lawyers will appeal to the High Court. They can do that. On what basis they will choose to do that is not yet clear. So the extradition order was issued by Chief Magistrate Paul Goldspring during this hearing this morning. And he said, to quote him, in layman's terms, I'm duty-bound to send your case to the Secretary of State for a decision. So, as I said, I think that's highly likely to be appealed. I think it believes it needs to be done by May the 18th. And we will see, indeed, if that does then go to the High Court. So the 50-year-old co-founder of WikiLeaks was not in court this morning. He joined via video link from Belmarsh top security prison, the prison, indeed, where he married just a few weeks ago his fiancée, Stella Morris. And interestingly, there were quite a lot of supporters outside a court with all kinds of placards, most of them saying, don't extradite Assange or hands off Assange. One of them was the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who said that Assange had done absolutely no more than telling the truth to the world, and that supporters would carry on campaigning. And let's remember that Julian Assange is wanted for alleged conspiracy to obtain and disclose what a national defence information after WikiLeaks published hundreds of thousands of top secret leaked documents relating to Afghanistan and the Iraq wars, and that at all times Julian Assange has denied any wrongdoing.
That's our correspondent in London, Benedict Pavio. Now to Sri Lanka, where anti-government protests continue following the death of a demonstrator yesterday. The country has plunged into financial disaster and is seeking a bailout from the International Monetary Fund. Citizens are dealing with regular blackouts and shortages of food and fuel. Protesters are demanding that the government resign. Yesterday, a 42-year-old man was killed in clashes with police, and a curfew is now being enforced in the town where those clashes happened. Hong Kong's new leader in waiting, John Lee, has been banned from YouTube. The company, which is owned by Google, said it was suspending Lee's YouTube channel to comply with U.S. sanctions. Those sanctions ban American companies from providing services to certain individuals, including Lee. Facebook and Instagram have made it so he can't make money from his accounts on those platforms. Lee is backed by Beijing and the only candidate seeking to replace Carrie Lam, who is stepping down. Earlier, I spoke to our correspondent in Hong Kong, Oliver Ferry.
Well, it seems to stem back to the U.S. sanctions, which he has been subject to since August 2020, along with a number of other high-ranking Hong Kong officials, including Chief Executive Carrie Lam, because of his role, his alleged role rather, in downgrading the autonomy of Hong Kong under one country, two systems. Now, John Lee himself said that the sanctions are a form of bullying, and he said that Alphabet, the owner of YouTube, taking down his channel was unreasonable. It does seem like a bit of an overly cautious move by Alphabet. For instance, Meta, the owners of Instagram and Facebook, said that they would keep John Lee's channels up, but that they wouldn't allow him to monetize them, which would presumably skirt the sanctions. Alphabet, on the other hand, decided that it wasn't going to take any risks. Now, this is probably not the greatest obstacle that John Lee has faced under those sanctions. For instance, Carrie Lam has once joked that she has to be paid in cash and has loads of bundles of cash lying around at home. So probably at this stage, given that he is the only candidate in this election and doesn't really have much of a campaign to fight, losing his YouTube channel at this stage is probably the least of John Lee's worries.
That's our correspondent in Hong Kong, Oliver Ferry. Rio de Janeiro will hold its famed carnival this weekend. The celebration was canceled for the last 2 years because of the pandemic, and it was delayed by 2 months this year over fears of another wave of COVID. But the party is going forward with all-night parades Friday and Saturday nights. The city is promising a huge, glittering spectacle. That's it for now. Stay tuned for more world news coming up here on France 24.
Hello and welcome to Middle East Matters on France 24. I'm Julia Kim. Coming up on the show this week. Israel's government faces collapse. An Arab-Israeli party suspending its membership of Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's fragile coalition over recent clashes in Jerusalem. 6 months and counting, Iraq's political deadlock drags on. With no president or prime minister, the effects are being felt by ordinary citizens. And retelling history, audiences in Egypt tune in to a controversial TV drama that depicts the 2013 coup d'etat from the perspective of the current regime. But we begin in Israel, where the government of Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is on the verge of collapse. This after the Arab-Israeli Ram party threatened to leave the ruling coalition over recent clashes in Jerusalem. More than 150 Palestinians were injured in those clashes with Israeli security forces. As Selena Sykes reports, Bennett is now scrambling to hold his fractious coalition together.
Israel's political stability is once again hanging by a thread. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is trying to hold together his fragile coalition following divisions sparked by violence in Jerusalem. Recent clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police at Al-Aqsa Mosque have come at a tense time, when Jewish Passover coincides with the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. The unrest has pushed the Ram party, largely backed by Muslim Arab Israelis, to freeze its membership, in a mainly symbolic move for now as Parliament is in recess, with hopes that tensions will blow over before it resumes in early May.
It's very difficult for Mr. Abbas to say nothing happens and we should continue in the same way. And no, he has to answer his basis, his electoral basis, which ask him what are we doing with this government, with this police and this army and so on.
Last year, Prime Minister Bennett ended 12 years of rule by Benjamin Netanyahu by bringing together an unlikely group of political parties, including leftists and centrists, as well as religious and hardline Jewish nationalist parties. And for the first time in Israel's history, a party from the country's Arab-Israeli minority. Ram party head Mansour Abbas has now threatened to withdraw its 4 members of parliament, in what would be a huge blow for the government.
It had a slender majority of 61 seats out of 120. A couple of weeks ago, there was a defection from the Prime Minister's own party. A right-wing Jewish politician defected, 60-60. If now there are 4 more politicians who are no longer going to be part of this government, it could mean the end of the government.
The opposition would have a hard task cobbling together enough votes to topple the government. Netanyahu's 53-seat bloc of right-wing Orthodox and far-right Jewish parties would have to unite with Arab ones, while many right-wing members currently in coalition have refused to join an administration led by Netanyahu, who is currently on trial for corruption, though the opposition could gather enough votes to dissolve parliament and trigger elections.
Now, 6 months after elections, Iraq is still no closer to choosing a president or prime minister. The two largest political blocs are locked in a power-sharing dispute, which has led to a boycott of parliamentary sessions. The effects of this stalemate is being felt amongst ordinary Iraqis. Our correspondent Lucille Wasserman has the story.
On the outskirts of Baghdad, Mohanad al-Asadi supervises the construction of new roads. Usually the manager has 10 projects going at once, but Iraq's political deadlock has brought most of his work to a standstill.
Most of the funds for infrastructure projects for roads, sewage, electricity, etc. are all funded by the federal budgets. Since the government hasn't been formed, the budget hasn't been submitted, let alone approved.
Thousands of projects are stalled across the country, and Mohanad can't hide his frustration with the political impasse.
We went to vote, now it's time for politicians to step up and work together, form a government and move this country forward.
Long delays are typical when forming a government in Iraq, on average lasting 5.5 months. This is a time when political blocs are supposed to negotiate how to share power, but for the first time in nearly 20 years, official discussions are simply not happening because the biggest winner of the elections, Muqtada al-Sadr, refuses to include his rivals, an alliance of pro-Iran parties, in the government.
The system of governance has been consensus-based since 2003, so all components of Iraqi society must agree. Now they want to break this tradition. Well then, it's within our rights to form alliances with other parties and boycott parliamentary sessions.
Neither political bloc has the majority needed to take control of the government. As a result, a stalemate has taken hold in the country, and ordinary citizens are suffering the fallout, especially in low-income neighborhoods where residents rely on government projects to bring about an adequate standard of living.
During elections, we were promised that projects would start as soon as the government was formed. For example, they told us that they were going to get rid of all this landfill so that we could live a normal life. If only you knew how the smell and smoke makes us sick.
There's no guarantee that these promises will be kept should a government be formed. But as long as the status quo remains, a better life for Iraqis is impossible.
In Lebanon, breaking the daily fast for Ramadan has never been so fraught with anxiety. Bread and oil are scarce, food shortages are worsening in the crisis-hit country because of the war in Ukraine. Lebanon imports over half its wheat from there. France 24's correspondent Sally Farhat has this report.
In her kitchen, Sula Sinno prepares tonight's dinner to break her fast. Zucchini stuffed with rice and meat. But for this mother, Ramadan is difficult to manage this year because of Lebanon's economic crisis.
In previous years, we used to have salad, soup, and different meals every iftar. All that changed this year. We satisfy our needs with one meal only.
Lebanese fasting during Ramadan also fear running out of flour and oil, as the import of both products has been halted by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In anticipation of such shortages, Sula stocked up on vegetable oil.
In this box, we have 4 oil cans, 5 liters each. This reserve is for Ramadan because we do a lot of frying during this month, but it also serves as a backup in case of any shortages.
Aside from the oil shortage, bread has been almost nowhere to be found due to the country's low flour reserve.
I will search for bread in different shops. Maybe I'll go to another supermarket or a bakery. If I can't find anything, we'll replace bread with biscuits.
The risks of shortages threaten the dinner plans of Lebanese fasting this Ramadan. Thousands of families have no choice but to be resilient once again while they wait for the storm to pass.
Now, an Egyptian television drama is stirring controversy in the country. The Choice is a series that recounts the days preceding the 2013 coup from the point of view of the current regime. Now, 9 years ago, on July the 3rd, the army deposed the democratically elected president Mohamed Morsi. Our correspondents sent us this story.
For decades, the show Fawazir Ramadan accompanied Egyptians during their month of fasting, a succession of lighthearted riddles that set the tone for the holiday from the 1960s to the year 2000. But Egypt's Ramadan entertainment has taken a political turn, notably with season 3 of controversial docudrama The Choice. It tells the story of the days following the 2011 revolution and the ouster of Hosni Mubarak, from the election of the Muslim Brotherhood's Mohamed Morsi to the 2013 military coup of General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
It's a documentary drama, but it's more like a documentary than a drama. And it covers a very recent period, just 6 or 7 years ago. So the viewers already know what happened and have part of the truth. Now they're watching the rest.
Made by a production company with ties to the government, critics say The Choice exclusively reflects the narrative of current President al-Sisi. Egyptians are divided between those who watch it with pleasure and those who see it as a form of government propaganda.
The Choice and other political shows like it, some people don't even want to watch them. We feel like the government is imposing them on us, when we're more used to watching comedies or soap operas during Ramadan.
Political dramas, even when they're made for a general audience, contain real information. Maybe there are a lot of people like me who don't really know what happened. I find that they document lots of events I wasn't necessarily aware of.
Real information, carefully filtered through the lens of Egyptian authorities, for a new style of Ramadan entertainment that divides audiences rather than bringing them together.
And finally, decorated glazed bricks almost 3,000 years old are on display at Iran's National Museum, capping off a 4-decade search disrupted by war and an international legal battle. The work was created by the Manaeans, who lived in the first millennium BC. The artifacts were looted during the 1979 Islamic Revolution and ended up being seized by Swiss police in 2008. After more than 10 years of legal wrangling, they were returned to Iran at the end of 2020. There are ongoing talks with the US and Australia to repatriate more stolen art. Well, that's it from us. There's more news coming up here on France 24. Stay with us.
Beyond the News. A daily opportunity to go beyond the headlines and explore the news in depth. Revisited. A return to places which were in the news a long time ago. Reporters. Our in-depth reports on international news. The 51%. A program about women reshaping our world. The Observers. Meet our observers who alert us to hidden realities. Focus, exclusive reports by our correspondents and journalists. And Down to Earth, on the vast potential of our planet. Every day, watch Beyond the News on France 24 and France24.com.